You say God took away your knowledge. God took away someone's good judgment. They made a mistake.
Your job in this world is to repair, not to despair. Sexual impurity will lead to poverty. Focus more time on becoming the one looking for the one. But don't marry a trophy wife. Marry a wife that will help you get the trophy. The girls are meeting guys that are not able to give. So they're becoming the male aspect, and that's causing a lot of problems in relationships. And what happens is when you become depressed, your devotions are missing the mind and heart together.
Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome, Gedale, to the In Search of More podcast. I'm sitting here with Gedale Fenster. Gedale is someone I'll talk in a little bit how we met, but a few weeks ago, within 2 days, 3 different people said, you have to sit down with Gedale. So I got the message. It came in loud and clear. Here we are. Welcome.
Here we are. Thank you.
Can you share a little bit of your background? Where were you born, raised, how you were raised?
Sure. I was born in Colombia. I grew up in Miami, pretty much. I was working on my uncle's stores and pretty much got caught up in the Miami lifestyle of get rich or die trying and started throwing clubs and party promoting.
You were raised Orthodox?
I was raised, parents were semi-Orthodox, but not really observant, but not so. I was really pretty much disconnected.
Right. Not steeped in it, but familiar with it.
Correct. Pretty disconnected. Just check the box. And then from there, I started, I got into a very, very bad gambling addiction, stock markets, girls, etc. And actually, my spiritual awakening came from Rabbi Nachman's book called Advice.
Called what?
Advice. There's a book called Advice from Rabbi Nachman's teachings. And the book said sexual impurity will lead to poverty. So at that time, I was like completely broke, completely confused. I had no idea what was happening. And then he started talking about how spilling seed and things like that. And you spoke many on porn, etc. How that affects you financially. So at the time, I wasn't really looking for a spiritual awakening. I was just looking for, listen, I need to make money. What's happening? What's the blockage, etc. And I found that, and he introduced a couple Tehillim in there, 10 Tehillim, and that's what really, getting into that, really everything just changed. It changed so fast. And I was hooked.
Can you speak a little bit, just kind of frame it for those listening, the scope of the gambling problem? You started working young, making money, living a certain life. Can you describe that?
Sure. I started living in Miami, obviously working, trying to, make money, trying to be successful. Obviously, when you have low self-esteem, you have to go gamble and try to do whatever you can to prove to everybody that you're making money.
Right.
And I did it in a very impulsive and ridiculous ways.
What ages were you at?
This is 21, 19, 20.
Got it.
So all the money I made, I basically blew it in the markets and
gambling and girls.
And just in the wrong lifestyle.
Liquid and ladies.
Miami, get rich or die trying. That was the mentality. And
there's 3 ways to lose money: liquid, ladies, leverage.
That's right. I like that. Never heard that.
Yeah. Okay, so you were into the liquid and the ladies.
And that's how I got into, it was more not even the money, it was just a complete blockage, depression, anxiety, very low motivation for anything spiritual.
So you had made some money and then lost it?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I made money throwing parties in South Beach. I would promote clubs, I would make money and lose it the next day. It felt like I had no luck. It was a blockage on everything.
Got you. So in one of these spaces, you get introduced to this book, Advice, on the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman is Rabbi Nachman.
I picked up a book
Breslov.
I said, I prayed to God for advice. I was desperate. I'm like, help me.
Do you remember what your relationship with God was at that point?
Give me calling out when you need help.
Right. The foxhole.
Not really to fill in. Nothing really more than that.
Not Jewish practice, but in a foxhole, I'm going to call out.
Yeah, semi Shabbat, but not. There was no real connection. There was no heart. There was no.
So not in practice and not in.
Yeah, there was no relationship. It was just going through the motions. I would say pretty traditional in a way.
You going to say spiritual but not religious? There's another one. There's religious but not spiritual.
Correct. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right,
Religious but not, that's the majority of today.
Unfortunately, yes.
But I had no idea of the connection between sexual immorality and spiritual. I had no idea one thing had to do with the other.
Sexual immorality and
connecting spiritually.
Understood.
I had no idea that was such a connection. I had no idea that one can completely affect your spiritual connection. I had no idea.
Sexual impurity
leads to not only financial spiritual poverty, but also mental poverty.
And is this a message that you feel is particularly for Jews? Because there's a lot of the Torah, the Bible, that's communicated specifically to Jewish people, and there's some that's wider rules of the world. Where do you think this flows?
I mean, today it flows everywhere. I mean, you have everybody talking about dopamine and everywhere. Even so
this is a message for everyone.
This is a message for
Jew
everybody.
and non-Jew
alike.
I mean,
you see the NoFap challenge having tremendous success. You see people, even Andrew Huberman. Everybody's talking about Peterson. They're all talking about stop watching porn. It's right. Everybody's out. It was never out like this. And this is definitely an area that spiritually just destroys you.
Right. I've seen also, in addition to the no porn, which I've seen kind of pop up in the last year or so, I've seen like the semen retention as well. That seems to be a movement that's gaining steam.
Correct.
As well. So
same concept.
Right. So can we define that when you say sexual impurity?
Sexual impurity it refers to obviously spilling seed, porn, even unfortunately having relations when you're not married, but obviously God has mercy on all of us, but it's definitely an area where, people ask me, relationship advice. People fly me in for relationship advice, singles events. And I've personally seen that's an area that hot starts end up with cold ends, where people get too physical in relationships, even if they're not watching porn, just too physical without getting to know each other. That has definitely affected most relationships.
I've heard the name of the Rebbe, that he said, if you are close when you should be distant, you'll be distant when you should be close.
Exactly. Correct.
So that's what your
correct
hot starts lead to.
It's just the whole point is cool off your impulses, heat up your vision. We want to my whole podcast is about really, really getting people to heat up their vision and, cool off your impulses. And at the end of the day, we all know that drive, according to Rabbi Nachman, is driven from sadness.
The drive for
porn, sexual immorality.
So let's take this back a little bit. You keep mentioning Rabbi Nachman. For someone who's never heard of him, who is he? What are the
Rabbi Nachman was a teacher around 260 years ago that spoke about from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. He came from Breslov, and he was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And he basically brought a new Torah to the world. He even says, I am completely old, but brand new. And his message really talks about, having a lot of hope, happiness, coping with tough times. And he has over, his magnum opus has 350 Torahs, just Torahs that, that you can relate to modern psychology today. Like, my classes today.
A Torah would mean
Torah would be a paragraph or a specific sicha, you would say that in Chabad, but he would use more Torahs.
So 350 teachings
plus other stuff. So his magnum opus is 350 teachings.
Today you're a student, more than a student,
I'm living
like a disciple.
Correct.
Of Rav Nachman, and you also teach. You spread his teachings primarily.
Correct. In a very modern way.
In a modern, relatable way.
Practical way.
So the way a lot of people know Rav Nachman, like growing up Chabad, the way I knew of him in two ways. So one was the people dancing, screaming "Na na na Nachman," right? That
right.
The energy, and as well as the visits to the gravesite, which is how we met. My wife had just given birth to our second child. I was heading to, I think, France for a weekend, and you came to me. I think you were going to
Uman,
and you stopped me in the airport and you said, "Hey, are you the guy who gave the TED talk on porn addiction?"
That's right.
So I'd heard your name before.
Right.
I heard, like, I thought Rabbi Gedale Fenster. I expected the long beard and everything. He said, "Hey, I'm Gedale Fenster." Said he related to the Gedale Fenster.
Right. That's right.
I am
That's
the
right.
Gedale Fenster.
I remember that day. Sure.
Right. So you went your way, I went mine. But here we are now. But I understand a lot of people do this pilgrimage.
Correct.
Annually to Uman. So those are the two ways that
you've heard of it.
I knew of him. So that, what we see, like the energy and the dancing on the street, how related is that to his his
It's a little
teachings.
it's a little exaggerated because his teachings are extremely disciplined, but because Rabbi Nachman's teachings have so much light that you need a vessel. So unfortunately, there's people that they don't have that vessel, so they take his lights and they do drugs with his teachings, and they say, "Oh, this is Rabbi Nachman." He said to be happy. He said to dance, but he didn't say to be in a trance for 300. You understand? It gets a little bit misused.
Right. That's where my question was coming from.
Sure.
Is like that's what I know most about him. That's not an accurate representation of who he is.
No, that's you have Chabad there's Chabad that talks about Mashiachas and the Messiah,
Right.
and there's Chabad that are completely different. You can walk into two different Chabads and have a different experience.
Exactly. So the Mishichist aspect of Chabad, where there's
It's the exterior, correct?
What many would consider extreme versions. The Rebbe is alive in a physical body, and we have to make space for him. And if you disrespect, we're going to blow you up, like that.
Exactly.
So they are to Chabad what the dancing beers are to Breslov.
Correct.
Understood.
Yes. Of course, it's okay to dance. The purpose of the dance is Rabbi Nachman knew that you have a tendency for sadness and depression. He says a
Right.
person is drawn to sadness and depression by nature.
Does he explain why?
Because this is the life we're in. This is
it's like gravity.
We are not correct. You are going to gravitate more to sadness and depression because you're a human being and you're not in this world. So you need to be able to think greater than you feel.
So in other words, happiness is a practice. It's not a natural state of being. Naturally, we're going to be pulled downward, and we have to do specific things to pull ourselves upward.
So he was more on the behaviors will change the feeling. So if all of a sudden I start dancing and I start becoming happy and I start celebrating in advance, even though I have no reason to, but because I can believe that it will be good, that itself will give me hope and it'll end up becoming good.
Understood.
That means, and there's a pasuk.
And there's some science about this. But
Yeah,
say
there's a pasuk that says, "Through joy you will go out." Right. When a person has a positive attitude,
yes,
you will go out. Not you will go out when you have joy. Do you understand? Not you will. When you go out, you'll have joy.
Right.
It's the opposite.
First is joy, then is
correct. You have to create the arousal from below, even if you're in a difficult circumstance. It will not come. We're waiting on a condition. No, you have to make a decision, and then everything changes. So Rabbi Nachman was very into this, taking the edge out of life, because life is life. Whether it's relationships, there's we're always either in a problem, we got out of a problem, or about to go into one. So life can definitely keep you stuck.
So there's a recognition of a heaviness within his teachings, and the expression is to be more optimistic.
So what he wanted you to do is he wanted you to convert the heaviness into a broken heart instead of getting depressed. He wanted you to take that heaviness, that lack, and take that lack to get close. Let's say you have an issue with your relationship. That can cause tremendous heaviness. Right? Be brokenhearted that there's no peace in your house versus being angry and depressed that your marriage is terrible.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. It's just transforming that lack is really for an invitation to draw close versus that lack is really out of anger and resentment, etc., which is very, very close to each other.
No, it's very close. I remember
close to each other.
So I'm married for, I think, about 5 years now. So it's relatively recent because we had 3 kids very quickly. So once our third is 2 years old, so it feels like now the relationship has started, right? Like after the last year and a half, really. And last year she did something that I wasn't happy with, and it was the first time I identified not being angry but being hurt. Like she came back and she said, "Are you angry with me?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm hurt." And it was a different tone to that conversation. The hurt we can deal with. The anger, no one knows what to do with.
Correct.
So that's what he's talking about. Is go a step below the anger.
Right.
Touch on the sadness. Brokenhearted.
And the broken heart is that lack is an invitation for you to now use prayer to change that consciously.
Who is the Hasidic master who said there's nothing as whole as a broken heart?
Right. The Kosker Rebbe.
The Kosker Rebbe.
Exactly.
There's nothing as whole as a broken heart.
Correct.
So he's kind of sharing that same message. They get to that see that lack that's there, brokenheartedness, open to prayer, the connection to God, and then
you will, it's not that the situation will be fixed. but you will have a different mindset in the situation.
So where does the happiness come in? Because it sounded like you said two different things. One is to go towards a broken heart, and the other is the...
Happiness comes after the broken heart. The joy comes after you handling a situation the proper way. Because you
even before everything is resolved.
Correct, because it's not what you got, it's who you became in that process.
Understood.
The fact that you became more connected, that challenge made you more connected. It's not about the end results. That lack was given to you so you can draw closer to your creator.
Understood. In addition to the dancing bears that I mentioned, there's also the pilgrimage, which I understand. I think it's the only one I've heard of, that thousands and thousands of people travel every single year to his gravesite in Uman. Where is that?
It's in Uman.
Where's Uman?
Ukraine.
It's in Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah.
So travel to Ukraine annually to be, I think it's for the Jewish New Year.
It's for the new Jewish New Year, because he had a promise that he could rectify even the person who's in the darkest of darkest places. And you see the pilgrimage starting from 5 people, 10 people, to now it's 30, 40, 50,000 people.
Amazing.
I mean, and people go there. The energy you go there it's a wild energy, and you see people from every aspect of life, and nobody has any self. They're connected to a higher purpose.
So what was the promise that he made?
That he can help them that whole year.
So someone who comes on the Jewish New Year to pray at his gravesite.
Yes, because Rosh Hashanah, the whole point of Rosh Hashanah is thinking positively. Okay. So Rabbi Nachman is the tzaddik, head of the year, head of the head.
Right.
What needs to be rectified is the head, and the thoughts are the head of the thoughts. So it's all about, why do we eat apples and honey and fish? It's because you want to put your mind in the right place on Rosh Hashanah.
Gotcha. Also, eat a fish head.
Correct.
Right.
All these things are to invoke positivity.
So to be physically there in that space. And then he promised
tremendous rectifications by being there, and I've seen the difference.
Well, I would imagine if it got to 30, 40, 50,000 people.
I've been going there 20 years already.
And people have seen differences.
Yeah.
From it.
It's funny, I used to go there, now I go and teach classes there, which is the craziest thing.
So what does it look like when it's there? Where are people sleeping?
It's a Jewish Woodstock. It's a wild,
sleeping in tents.
Energetic. No, there's hotels. There's not our types of hotels. But some people sleep in tents, but just being there, there's an energetic consciousness there that anybody just feels it. You feel like a lift of energetic consciousness.
I was told that someone said that anyone who goes there becomes his disciple. Something to that effect.
There's a tremendous effect that when you go there, you do get you can understand his teachings a little bit better. But if Breslovers in general, they're very emotional people. They're very, I would say, just like addicts, are souls of tohu. I think Chabad talks about that. Souls of chaos. Breslovers always have. There's always energy. There's always brokenness up and down. There's no.
I got you. It's emotional, and you consider yourself in that as well.
100%.
Gotcha.
Like if every problem was taken away from me, I would somehow find a way to make a mess. Just very similar to addictive behavior.
So for you consider yourself a gambling addict with the strongest gambling addiction as...
I haven't gambled in 20 years.
Right, but I'm saying that the strength of it, the loss of control that you had with gambling was on par with what other people have described around gambling addiction?
Yes.
And you didn't go to 12 steps, you went to...
I went straight to Rabbi Nachman.
His teachings, and you feel...
And it completely changed everything.
Gotcha. Can you...
because Rabbi Nachman's teachings are on the 12 steps.
I'm sure they're everything.
Every single daily meditation, daily accounting, connecting to the truth, surrendering, having faith, all pretty much the 12 steps are in Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Every one of them.
Right. A story I like to say is Rabbi Twersky, Abraham Twersky, who's the rabbi who pretty much took on his back to send Jews to the 12 steps.
Correct.
A lot of 12 steps were in church basements.
Right.
And
of course.
A lot of Jews and others, rabbis, were uncomfortable with this. How can you send... We're supposed to have the answers. How can you send someone to the 12 steps? So someone asked him this question pointedly and said, Rabbi Twersky, we have Musar. We have Hasidic philosophy, Chassidus. How can you send someone to a church basement to get hope and healing? So Rabbi Twersky said, you're right. We do have these things. However, I don't know of a group where people read this sefer, read this book like their life depends on it. Either the Hasidic teachings or Musar. But I do know a room where people read the book of Alcoholics Anonymous like their life depends on it.
Correct.
So I'm sending them. there. So you read Rav Nachman's teachings like your life depends on it.
Yes. It's a good example. Correct. Pretty much it's that same raw energy that you know is the truth. You know, they're not questioning. You know, here you see a guy, how do we know? What's the rush? What's
Right.
we become too in the head. There's no heart. Rabbi Nachman's bringing down the heart.
And you said a lot of it was related to sexual
All kinds
impropriety.
He knew a human condition where a person could fall into. He didn't just speak about sex. He
Sex
spoke
and
about
money are the two.
money, and he spoke about food.
Oh, food
Spoke
too.
about all of it. Money has 20 chapters on money. Your relationship to money can make you depressed. And what happens is when you become depressed, your devotions are missing the mind and heart together. So when you're praying, you're not really praying. You're not there. You're disconnected. So he was very much into owning the disconnection, and then crying out to be reconnected. It means that you should be bothered that you're disconnected. You shouldn't say it's not for me. That should cause an arousal of distance. So
It's
you can see
interesting. It sounds
a lot of emotions, a lot of like ratzon.
It sounds like something like no shame, no regrets. Take whatever you have,
100%.
the situation you're in, and use that to
Bingo.
propel you forward.
That's why people love it, because your job in this, and I say this line all the time, your job in this world is to repair, not to despair. Like not what happened, but what's next. Like what now?
Right. So everything is okay. Everything could be used. Let's lemons into lemonade.
Not only that, but there's
teachings.
times that your knowledge will be taken away from you that you should fall. So you should be in that experience. So even there's times where even if you didn't do anything wrong, but God took away your knowledge, so you should fall just so you can humble yourself and go to another level.
You say God took away your knowledge. God took away someone's good judgment. They made a mistake.
Correct.
Now they're in a space of despair. And then from there, they can
There's a
reach even
they're
higher.
in a place of vulnerability, because now they can reach higher places that would have never gone before.
Got it. So connect this to the sexual impurity
Right.
and where to...
So sexual impurity happens when you fall into addictions of money, food, and that, because you need to escape. Right. You need to escape, and that's the first escape. Kabbalistically, there's a name of Lilith.
Right.
You know, she's responsible for the seed, but she's also Yelala. She's also responsible for the waning and sadness.
Okay. So the reason you don't
you're
say her name,
right? You don't say the name because it invokes.
it gives some power.
It gives power to that name.
Okay. So you spelled it, but she's the...
She's very connected. She's the prosecutor, and she invokes you in sadness, and then she prosecutes you with some kind of sexual appetite.
Oh, interesting. The 1-2 punch.
Correct.
So the
That's
sadness
her job.
first.
Yeah.
Sadness and loneliness, is that synonymous for you?
Sadness, loneliness, but it comes from some kind of trigger. Let's say I don't have faith in my business and I lose money in my business. Next thing you know, here you go. That's my invitation.
Right. I'm imagining from here, everything is going to go wrong.
Correct.
Loss of identity, loss of safety.
Correct. That's the dangerous part. That our job. That's why his emphasis was a lot on hanging on, because if you hang on, you don't have to deal with the other issue,
Which is?
which is sexual immorality. Because now you have two problems, just like an addict has two problems. First, he has to when he recovers, he has to go back to the original problem.
Right.
That's not just because
You have
I'm
two
in
problems. You
recovery.
have the problem that you used
And you have a problem that you're
the addiction for, and now you have the
Correct.
addiction also.
Correct. You have to still go back to the original problem.
Right.
And that has to be dealt with, whether it's low self-esteem. Just because you're in recovery doesn't mean you have...
So he doesn't see sexual immorality as the original problem. He sees that as a response to sadness.
To sadness, exactly.
Okay, so in your case, when
And
you...
he specialized in that.
Understood. So in your case, when you read the book, Advice, and the line you said was sexual...
Immorality leads
Leads
to
to
poverty.
Okay, so that triggered something in you.
Correct.
And so where did you start with? Did you start by stripping away the sexual sexual behaviors you weren't proud of?
He gave a remedy of a tikkun klali, 10 psalms, you could say.
Okay.
So I started not doing it anymore, because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be poor. It was more of like, do I want to be this? Do I want to be poor? And at that time, that gave me leverage to say, I didn't even know. Luckily, I had blind faith. But I said, I can't do this anymore. And then luckily, as soon as I changed it, I saw things just changing quickly.
So the
Fast.
impetus was really believing you would become poor?
Huh?
You believed you would become poor from sexual
I believe
morality.
it led me because there were so many cases where I just missed things by months that would have been a change in my life. It was a clear sign that before my mazel was in the toilet.
Good luck.
Yeah, my luck was just nothing I touched was just happening.
And the fact that you see people who are sexually immoral by your standards, but they're financially successful, you would say they're poor somewhere
Harvey
else?
Weinstein, it doesn't mean it's going to stay with them. Or they could be, or the money's a curse. Money's not always a blessing.
Exactly. So poverty was more than just poverty, than
Correct.
financial poverty.
Correct.
So you believe that that's for everyone. Sexual immorality leads to some form of
It will
poverty.
lead you to some form of poverty. Because even if you have, the worst thing a gambler could do is make money in a casino because he can't stop.
Right.
He can't stop. The problem is it's not making, it's stopping.
Right.
So once you get into that chase, it's over. The chase is the problem.
So in your case, he gives a prescription, which is reading 10 Psalms of David daily.
It's called 10 Psalms to help you prevent and to take back the seed that was stuck in that place, to put it back to its source. Because remember, when you spill seed,
Yes.
that has potential to make children. So if it doesn't make children, what is it going to make? It's going to make something in Kabbalah called klipa. Klipa is a husk. It's something that basically covers good, right? And that klipa is being sustained by the person who created it, which is the person who spilled the seed.
It's being sustained.
Correct. You have to.
So there's a negative energy that's created from spilling seed,
and you are sustaining that energy.
and it's being sustained.
Because once you create a negativity, you have to sustain it.
Okay.
If I have 3 children in Guatemala, I have to pay child support.
Right. Then if you have 3 potential children.
Right. But why is this issue such an issue? Because that had a potential for life.
Right. But explain the metaphor. So if you have 3, if the seed turns into children, then you have 3 kids to support.
Correct. There's
Possibly.
no problem. No, there's no problem because it's not spilled. You had relations. You have relations, you're not spilling seed. When it's spilling seed is when you spill something, that all of a sudden gives an arousal for a negative aspect. It's very similar to.
So it sits and lives there.
It sits and lives there and is sustained by you.
Can you explain that in a way that it's not mystical, in a very practical way?
So it's called, for example, brain fog. The feeling of after a person watches, he feels shame, right? Brain fog.
Yes.
Low motivation to do anything. These are forms of klipas. It's called flashing fire. It's from Yehezkel's vision. A flashing fire, which is impulsiveness. Ruach Sa'ara, which is a depression, a spirit of depression. And one is called a great cloud, which is a brain
Understood.
fog.
Okay, so what you're saying is that feeling that someone will physically have, which I've had it, right?
Sure.
After, masturbating to pornography,
Sure.
I've had a feeling of
And you see the
brain
difference.
fog, numbness,
Yeah.
100%, right? Brain fog, numbness, just a general lower energy.
Disconnection.
Okay,
low
so you're
energy.
seeing that as an energy which is formed,
Correct.
right? And that's kind of living around us.
Correct.
Is it doing anything more than just
It's disconnecting you from spirituality. You don't
Understood.
feel like you don't want to put up the feeling. You don't have anything to do with anything. You lose the spark. You lose the spark of connection.
got it to the world, to God, to spirituality?
You
to-
just lose. You
to
lose
others.
connection to others, to everything.
Yeah. I've found, for example, just to make it very practical, that I wouldn't want to interview someone after masturbating because I couldn't give you any feedback on this individual. I had nothing to tell you. I heard what they said, but I could have read that from the resume, the feeling that I'd get from sitting with someone and saying, this is my opinion on this person and whether I think we should move forward with hiring them or not. I had no, that
Amazing.
was out the window. So in Rabbi Nachman's view, these live there, these spirits, and he gives 10 Psalms to read
To put,
in order to
put that spark back to its place. That's why the numerical value of Tehillim is 485. It's the same numerical value as that lady, Lailith.
Interesting. So it's the counterbalance
Exactly.
to it. So it's reading these 10 and the frequency of reading
I
that?
do. I've been doing them every day for the past 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's every single
Because it's
day.
also preventative. It's also preventative.
So it
You know
helps.
the difference when you take it and when you don't take it.
You feel a difference.
Yeah.
I got you. And this is a large part of your message today, speaking about
This
porn,
is
masturbation, sexual immorality.
No, I'm it's a message about everything. But this is an area where I've seen where guys have this issue. They have to start here, because if you have a dirty cup, anything you put in the cup is going to be dirty. So if we don't work on cleaning the cup, what's the difference? If you have low self-esteem and you're telling me, I need you to find me somebody to get married, okay?
You have almost nothing to work with.
It's going to look like abusive situation. It's going to look like self-centered. It's going to look like it's going to be a horror show. What's the difference who you marry? You get me?
Right.
If you don't fix the low self-esteem, then the relationship is just going to show you evidence of what you're really feeling.
Gotcha. How do you balance, people have this question for me also, but how do you balance your business pursuits and the work you do with teachings of Rabbi Nachman? Because you're fairly active. You speak, you travel.
It really has to be in the mornings. The spiritual work is really in the mornings.
Meaning?
I wake up super early, 3:30, 4 o'clock, plan the class, etc. I do my class by 9, and then I got to go to work.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's not easy.
Right.
It's been, as work gets more and more, it becomes extremely hard to do both.
And do you feel that there's is there a financial sacrifice for you? Meaning, do you feel like you pay it, or do you feel like it feeds the business?
I've only seen good things from it.
Got it.
Yeah, I've only seen good things. I've seen blessing across the board. Also for me, because the teachings also help you for business. It helps you mentally.
Right. It helps
How
you
to
more
deal
clear.
with things and how to deal with people. Relationships. So the teachings are extremely practical for every aspect of life.
Got it. But you're often traveling, speaking.
When I can, yeah.
When you can.
I turn down a lot because it's just I can't just go to do classes here and there. So I do specific events.
Right. What's the most common reason someone would bring you out? What's the subject that you talking about most these days?
Singles, dating,
Relationships.
Spirituality, anxiety, everything. I mean, it's
So is there a message to singles in the world of Tinder,
I mean,
JDate?
there's a lot of message to it. It's more about focus more time on becoming the one than looking for the one. That is really the message. Working on find why you're not attracting the one instead of looking for the one. Today we're just looking for the one. We're not getting better. We're just looking for my soulmate. Become your soulmate. Get to know what you're looking for.
Right. Become that.
Yeah.
Become that person.
You have to know one to know one. To become one, you have to know who you are. So spend time. When you know that, you end up looking for different people.
And that process looks like?
Prayer, change. The majority of my class is about hiring your consciousness. In a higher consciousness, you would completely act differently.
So prayer, meditation,
And
study.
doing whatever you can to increase your consciousness.
So what is whatever you can?
It's
someone may not know.
prayer, study, practically prayer and study.
Prayer and study.
Yeah, knowledge, study, helping, giving service.
Got
But
it.
that is usually what our sages tell. Torah and study usually help us increase our consciousness.
And you find that this is landing for singles or understanding it when you're delivering that
I've had tremendous results.
tremendous
Yes.
results
Yeah.
with giving that message.
For guys specifically, their main job is to clean up this act on sexual immorality, and that automatically attracts them different people. I get invitations all the time.
Right. It often becomes very difficult when you're in that state of porn and
Correct,
masturbation on a
correct.
regular basis.
and you're looking for somebody, and they're looking at you, and they're like, they're disconnected from you. You can't look at them straight in the eyes.
Right.
So I tell them this is the area where you need to focus on sexual purity. Then we can work.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, the
Correct.
practical. So you're
Correct.
seeing that
Yeah.
you're saying that this is rampant. So you're connecting. A lot of people talk about especially in the Orthodox Jewish world, of a crisis that we've never seen before of men now meaning
That's not being dealt
women.
with.
And the main message for that, for men, you say,
Well, the man is really
Get
the
off the
giver.
porn.
Man is really the giver. So what is he going to give if he feels? You understand?
right,
So that also, when a person's connected to that energy, it's affecting him financially, spiritually, mentally. So he's going to show up to a girl, he's going to get rejected.
Understood. And for the women, you're recommending
Women,
what?
the women, they have to increase their happiness. They have to. Sometimes they're looking for, their expectations are a way to. I would say for women, is finding good points in their change from, instead of expectations, more appreciation. I see that the energy now. Women have a lot of expectations.
What sort of expectations?
He has to be this. He has to be that. He has
Like
to
a
be
checklist
this.
of what
The checklist and not appreciating. There's too much. I believe myself. The feminine energy is sometimes, even in marriage, sometimes the feminist movement is destroying a lot of marriages.
Can you put
Because
some
women need to know how to be women, and men have to be men. But sometimes the woman is in the man's role.
So you're
and
saying
the man is in the woman's role.
Okay, so you're saying in a way that's obvious to you, but obviously there's a lot of confusion on the subject. So
Correct.
man and women, what is the man's role? What is the woman's
The
role?
man's role is to be the son, to be the giver, and she's to become she's the receiver. You understand? But he has to. The problem is they're coming to, girls are meeting guys that are not able to give, so
Right.
they're becoming the male version of it, the male aspect, and that's causing a lot of problems in relationships.
So to take it back to your story, right? Everything you had, you spent on gambling and other women. So you had nothing to give
Correct.
anyone you met.
Correct.
So there was nothing to give.
Correct.
There was none of that discipline to retain anything you had, to build anything up. So you had nothing to give. So the man, to be in that role of being able to
He has to have confidence. A man can give by giving confidence and having self-control, right? That's what Rabbi Nachman says. Man's job is to have self-control and have confidence. And
what would be the Hebrew word for confidence?
I would say bitachon, just to have confidence in himself.
Oh, I got it. Right, self-trust.
Having the
Yes.
leader, not when you lose your confidence, then you start blaming your wife for everything. You start blaming this. You start blaming that. It's not easy. Again, we all fall in
Sure,
this.
of course.
But technically, we're supposed to become the mashpia. We're supposed to give the
Be
energy.
giving. And the women,
They receive, but they'll give you back what you give them.
say more.
For example, they'll give you back if you get back from the wife what you give her.
Okay.
According again, not easy. We're not confessing that we're 100% on that. That means you're whatever you do spiritually. If you shine into her light, you get that light back. That's why parnasa comes from the wife. You understand?
Explain this.
Parnasa comes from the wife because
Wealth comes from the
happy
wife.
wife,
Wealth comes
happy
from the-
wife, happy life. So because you did your role and honor her and provide for her and respect her, you're actually benefiting from that. She has feminine aspects of her light, and you
Right.
actually benefit from that.
Okay.
From
So
the bounce back.
you said earlier, strong statement, the feminine movement is destroying marriages.
There's a lot of too much, I would say, what I've seen, too much aggressive. It's just, again, sometimes there is weak men, but there's the women appear to be much stronger than the men.
And they're giving. Meaning they're stepping into that role of giver versus
correct.
receiver. So the challenge is for a man to give is to have.
The man, once the man is confident and he does his thing, he could become a giver. But
Right.
if the
Meaning he
man
needs
is-
self-control and discipline in order to have.
Correct.
Right. You got to take it in, save it, and then
Correct.
you have something to
Exactly.
give. Save it, invest it versus
Correct.
spending and showing. Right. That makes sense. A lot of men struggle with
Right.
this. We make it, we want to show it.
Right.
Versus save, invest, have something to give.
Correct.
Little discipline, save your seed for the right woman. Okay, that makes a lot
Exactly.
of sense. What's the challenge for a woman to receive? What's the obstacle in their psyche?
Their obstacle in their psyche would be comparing their life to other people, social media. You can have a guy who has potential, but he's not where you think the guy's going to be a CEO of a 500 company. So their problem is kavod, honor.
Image, status,
Honor, right? They need a lot of honor.
women.
Correct.
What is that about?
Honor is they honor is always needing validation, always needing. That's why, again, shopping. Woman buys a dress, she wants a compliment.
Right.
So social media today, you put a picture, you get 1,000 likes. That's a form of kavod. So they thrive on kavod.
On worship almost.
They worship validation because they're more of the moon. They need the validation, but it becomes sometimes way too much.
And then they feel like they're not getting enough.
Right. My husband should have been make more money. And then they become ungrateful. And that could cause problems in marriages. Many
For
times.
sure.
They see their neighbors more successful. Why am I not making? So they could The aspect of not getting enough could lead to jealousy and anger.
So in my worldview, if there's two to tango, then there's two who can solve the problem. So I understand how the man can solve the problem. The man can solve the problem by self-discipline, control, being in a state of giving. How can the woman solve the problem?
By being more grateful.
And then that
appreciating what she does have.
Right. So receiving.
I always say this line: a woman who knows how to be a good coach and a cheerleader
for their husband. So then they're receiving, they're truly receiving, not receiving it with judgment.
Correct.
Right. So you're saying women have challenges. The challenge for the feminine is to receive.
Right.
Without judgment.
Women also have to woman has the aspect of bina, which is intuition. So they do have the aspect to drive the man higher. They can they have that. I always said, don't marry a trophy wife. Marry a wife that will help you get the trophy. So they can help you get the trophy. They can help you develop yourself. And this is where Shalom Bayit it's where the man can handle this criticism and can handle it. But sometimes it's too much of criticism. And it has to be done the right way. It has to be done with the right words. But their intention could be, I want to make my man stronger. But when they do it with impatientness and with
putting them down.
And that's where there has to be a tactical way to do this.
Right.
A woman's, her problem is her mouth. Putting him down, you're not good enough, you're not this enough. And that a man will check out.
Yeah, I saw a video of Patrick Bet-David where he said,
sure.
behind every good man is a great woman or,
Correct.
good woman. He said, but the inverse is true also.
Yes.
Behind every broken man is a woman who's emasculated him.
100%.
So
I do believe that.
So the role of the woman.
She's the feminine aspect. She's the bina. So she has to also help develop him. Help him, we think a soulmate is like, finding a perfect love. A soulmate really is a person it's going to break down your walls, where you have walls. And we're in this illusion of all these people. Oh, I need my soulmate. And it's really the greatest piece is two opposites coming together. So how much can we handle that? Now, if we're spiritual and we recognize this is from God, and God, you sent me this woman to help me break some of my walls I have, then we take it good. But if we don't, we shoot the messenger.
So there's something I feel like I'm missing and not understanding about the woman receiving. Like, what does that look like in an optimal state? What exactly are the challenges? So if she's meeting a man, let me add to that question. So she's meeting a man who doesn't have much to give. Everyone has something to give, but he's, in the porn and masturbation and
then there's no receiving.
Lack of discipline. There isn't much, but there's always something. There's a little bit something to work with. I saw it with myself. I met my wife in a very broken space, and she always told me from the beginning, and I was not in a good place, not proud of myself. It was the first time I really found out that I had a sexual addiction because the first time after meeting her that I tried to stop certain behaviors.
Wow.
And until we try to stop, we don't understand the force of the power that's keeping us going. But she always said one thing to me. She said, I know this isn't you. Like, you're doing it, but I know it's not you. So there was something that she was able to.
So she built you up.
Tremendously.
She built you up.
100%.
So that's exactly the role. I know this is not you versus you are this. Just like with a child. You're better than this. So the woman knows how to be a coach and a cheerleader. When he's has arrogance, he has to be a coach. Hey, calm down, watch the ego. But when he's struggling, you need to know how to pick him up also.
Lift him up. So
same thing with a guy.
So being able to truly receive that little bit that they're giving, that little bit that they have, receive it completely.
Right.
Bring it back to them.
They'll get it back. Exactly.
And then
correct, because I'm sure your wife has gotten a lot of from your growth. She's gotten it back
for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
So she invested the right way. She's gotten back.
Got the return.
She's gotten a return.
Yeah.
So you can see it's so important. It's so important.
And unfortunately, I've seen it with. I have a friend who was struggling with money 2 years ago, and he's got into a new job, and he started making 2.5, 3 times the salary in 2 years.
Right.
And he's telling me that his wife is still like beating him down. I think he said he has a brother-in-law, or she has a brother, whatever, some relative who she keeps comparing him to. They have 3 maids. We only have 1 3 times a week. And just how
she could lose everything because he could say enough is enough.
Right.
Enough is enough.
Like he had grown in a way as a business owner, you're like to get to that state where you're 2.5 times. And if you understand compounding,
Money can't fix it.
It can.
Money can't fix it.
So what is the solution? What would you tell the
Again,
man?
if she's not connected at all, and she's only thinking self-worth is net worth, then there's really nothing you could do with her.
So what are you recommending? Divorce?
She needs guidance from somebody else. But listen, you have no idea how many people tell me after a divorce, I should have been nicer to my husband. You need to see counseling. You see marriage counseling.
And what would you tell the man in that situation who's getting beaten down and worn out?
Take it from Hashem. Use it to change yourself, to become spiritually better.
Take what from Hashem?
Take this obstacle that is coming from Hashem. It's coming from His benefit to get him closer to Him. Do as much as you can, But if at the end of the day you can't please somebody who's not happy. You cannot make somebody miserable happy, and it has to always come from somebody else. It cannot come that usually the husband and wife will never be able to tell each other. It has to come from somebody else.
Okay, so your advice to him in that situation is get a third party.
Get a therapist.
Get a therapist.
Get a third party.
A coach, a rabbi, something.
Correct.
In between you who can help straighten this woman out.
But when a woman is jealousy, she's not getting her own blessing, but whatever she wants she's not going to get anyway.
Understood. So pitfalls of women for you: chasing after status, image, validation.
Kavod. Yeah.
Right?
Any
all
form
sorts
of honor.
All sorts
that
of
umbrella.
Right. Jealousy is an offshoot of that.
Right.
Comparison, an offshoot of that.
Correct.
All of those things.
Anger. This is why I say many times we have to spend more time understanding each other than judging each other. It's very important that I know all the signs by heart. I know where that person's coming from. We all live in a different world. We all there's a different.
You're saying signs as in horoscopes.
Horoscopes are just for behaviors, to understand where you're coming from. How do you view the world, and that's helped me understand people. You understand, when you understand people, you recognize their limitations, and you don't judge them as more. So it's extremely important that you have to understand people.
And you're saying, for example, in your own relationship, like you and your wife, you understanding her understanding.
That's the only way. Obviously, we have to get third parties. We have to get people involved. Sometimes when we have issues,
So what are some specific practices, for example, you've done with your wife, if you're comfortable sharing? I'm sure it wasn't uphill.
We have Rebbitzins, or practically, for example, I'll usually. It's funny how my Shalom Bayit is very connected to my quality of prayer. When my prayer is on the money, I have peace. But when my prayer is off, when I'm disconnected.
When your prayer is on the money by being off the money.
There's
by being not about the money.
Yeah, sure. There's a great line by Rav Hunter. He says, "Trouble doesn't get you out of prayer. Prayer doesn't get you out of trouble. Trouble gets you into prayer.
Gets you into prayer.
Sometimes the trouble is just to get you into prayer."
Okay, so you're connecting if you're feeling a disconnection in your relationship with your wife, the message for you is you're not praying properly.
It's I need to work on something. Either maybe I'm resenting, maybe I'm having some kind of resentment, maybe I'm not judging her favorably, maybe I'm not appreciating her. So I have to look at the spiritual flow that I think maybe I could be off on, and then change that.
I got you. So in your own relationship, looking at these things within yourself, B, bringing in a third party when is necessary to to communicate and understanding each other real well.
Correct.
You mentioned horoscopes, which, it's something interesting around astrology is that within Judaism, there's a lot that's referenced, especially in this section of the Torah.
Right.
You have, one of the plagues that are given, right? God said to Moses, tell them the specific time so their astrologers don't make a mistake about when the prayer is. So in other words, there's a recognition that astrology has a certain power within Judaism.
For sure.
Understand it. But most Jews don't talk about it, see it as
correct.
Hocus pocus.
That doesn't mean Sefer Yetzirah talks about it. There's many books on the 4 elements, because all astrology is based on the 4 elements, which Rabbi Nachman speaks about. So I like it because I get into it because it does help you understand behaviors. For example, the month of Tevet. We're in the month of Tevet right now. This month, according to the Sefer Yetzirah, represents anger, represents chaotic energy.
The Sefer Yetzirah is a book that they say is written by Adam, the first man.
First man. Okay.
That's a-
Take its source. There's this month itself talks about Reb Pinson has great books on the 12 months.
Right.
I don't know if you heard of Reb Pinson.
The Chabad.
His
Reb Pinson.
books are really great.
Right. I've read a few of his.
Yeah. But he has
Shabbos
books on
and
he has
so on,
books
yeah.
on months. And he really goes deep into the energy of the month. So there's sometimes, even if I'm just the energy of this month is raw chaos. There's just a lot of anger this month. It belongs to Asaph. So every month has its own
energy.
plus your energy.
So you're understanding that, like, for example, the month you're born. Can you share?
I'm
some of that
a Scorpio.
So in the Hebrew month, it would be Cheshvan?
Cheshvan, correct.
Okay.
So I know parts about me that I'm very intense. I'm
Okay,
water
so teach me, because
intense.
my wife is also Scorpio and
Oh, your wife's a Scorpio?
Cheshvan. So not
Okay,
that I look
sure.
at these that carefully. I just
Right. So that
right. You're speaking to a skeptic, a cynic. I know that.
I'll tell you.
Right. So
I'll probably
Tell me.
predict everything about your wife in a minute.
let's go.
So your wife is very loyal, intense, but they take things extremely personal. Like it's very mood swings, heavy mood swings, but it's an
No
all
comment.
it's an all in attitude. It's not halfway.
Right, loyal, a fierce loyalty.
Yeah, but it's all in also. Whatever they do it all in. It's extremely intense energy. So whatever they do, it's intensity.
So understanding it in your case, not to make it about my wife,
Correct.
so she doesn't go all in on me.
Right. That's Scorpio. That's a Scorpio move. Scorpios get revenge if they don't have spirituality. If you wrong them, they get revenge. They don't let it go. It's water, but anytime you're dealing with water, you're dealing with extreme emotional issues.
So
by nature,
okay, so it's the energy of water, intense emotion.
intense emotion.
So what are some of the challenges, for example, and for my
Of a
wife not to
Scorpio.
feel
Okay.
right? So what are the challenges that meaning the way you're understanding it is that there's certain obstacles you have to look out for in your own life.
Right. There's
For
certain
example.
things that you have to deal with in general. For example, making things too dramatic. It's a situation. Don't make it a big deal. Scorpios make everything a big deal. They get too much into drama.
Can you give an example?
This broke. You did it because you didn't care about me. It broke. It has nothing to do with you. You understand? Or this, or you forgot to pick up the kids because you don't really care about me. No, I forgot to pick up the kids. It's not all about you. Scorpios have a problem making everything about them. That's the negative aspects.
Okay, like little narcissism
Just everything's
comes back to me.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Taking things personally.
Taking things. That's the majority of it. But again, as far as the loyal, the good, positive, intense
Right.
loyalty, if I wasn't, I could never do what I'm doing.
Right.
Because I'm loyal,
in.
intense, all in energy. There's a lot of energy there. That energy has to go somewhere.
Right.
So if that energy doesn't go somewhere, where is it going to go? It has to be channeled to the good. If it's not channeled to the good, right, it's going to be channeled to the bad.
Okay. And can you give an example? I don't know how comfortable your wife is, but just for a parallel of a second one and how that would work together. So you're saying with your wife understanding her pitfalls, maybe not her, maybe someone else that you're comfortable saying, like a second sign. And
or let's say for another person's an Aries, okay?
Month of?
April. Right. So April, Aries is fire.
In Hebrew, Aries is
Iyar? No. It's Nissan.
Nissan, okay.
So Aries are leaders. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Babich Rebbe.
Right.
I'm sorry, not Moshe. The Babich Rebbe Rabbi Nachman was an Aries.
Got it.
So you could see the potential that they could do. But also Paro was a leader, was an Aries too. And you could see egotistical. So Aries they're very driven. Let's go. They're very driven in life, but their problem is it's only about them.
So it's strong leadership qualities.
Strong leadership, but it could be all only self-centeredness.
Right.
And their comments could be very blunt. And so that person will struggle with speech. But will they be motivated? Will they be ready to go? Yes. They'll always have energy.
So to bring this back to relationships, you feel that spending time understanding these qualities, then seeing the strengths and weaknesses as a package deal.
Correct.
Gedale is high energy. Sometimes he'll take things personal. Other times he's going to create for you. You can't have one without the other. This is who
you understand.
he
It's
is.
not about you. The person has their own struggles. Not everything's about you.
And it helps one person in the relationship to understand the other.
It does. It does tremendously, because you understand where that person's coming. And guess what? 99% is you get what you see.
You get
Very few people work on themselves to become better in that aspect.
In which aspect?
In changing their nature.
But that's not your audience, and that's not mine. I mean, if they weren't willing to change, then why they?
Correct. But when you notice the issue, at least you can now use it to change the issue. So I have to pray. Please don't let me think things personal. I've had to do a lot of self-work because I've had this intensity that I needed to channel somewhere.
So you don't reduce the intensity, you channel the intensity.
You channel the intensity, correct. You channel it.
So connect it again to the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. You take what you have, find the goodness, and work with it.
Yeah, because Rabbi Nachman is not about... Rabbi Nachman's number one Torah that he spoke about was a zamra, which means I will sing with what I have.
I will what?
Sing with what I have.
Beautiful.
Not what I don't have. Low self-esteem is singing what you don't have, focusing on what you don't have. Rabbi Nachman is, okay, my marriage is 30% good, 70% bad. I need to focus on the 30% and get that 30% to 100.
Right. Or take the brokenheartedness from the 17% and channel that into a deeper connection.
Correct. But you always, even if you're in a situation in life that we always know that every problem becomes a solution. At the end of the problem is always in the solution. Your porn addiction led you to spiritual awakening. 100%.
Yeah.
So there was a tremendous amount of a good point in that situation, right? If you didn't go through that, you would probably I'm sure you've helped many people be vulnerable about their addictions, right? But you had to go through that.
100%.
So in that storm, you don't see anything good. You only see shame and depression. But because you found meaning in that. You actually found that there was actually the solution was in the problem. So every one of us has a problem that the solution's in the problem, and our job is to find that.
Right, and Rabbi Nachman's message helps
you find that,
to dig deeper into that and find it.
Correct.
Very different than, say, an ascetic lifestyle where you're pushing away things and this is not good, this is good. More spirituality opposed to materiality. That's not him.
Correct.
Everything is good. Everything is a part of God. We have to
finding mindfulness, finding godliness and everything. That's Rabbi Nachman.
Understood.
Even in the stuff that doesn't appear to be good.
Right. Any past behaviors, any regret, everything has something.
All that is meant to be let go and surrendered. There's nobody that spoke about surrender more than Rabbi Nachman.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I wanted to have for myself, a conversation on surrender. Can we define surrender? Can we put some language around this?
There's a lot of I've gone into this topic a lot. One is actually emunah, is a form of surrender, having faith and not worrying about the issue anymore, believing it's for the best.
Right,
That's a form of surrender.
So faith being the leap from what I know to what I'm willing to believe, right, in God, and
correct, that it's happening for your benefit. That's a form of surrender.
Right. I'm surrendering what I don't know.
Correct.
And believing there's someone who does know.
Thank you is a form of surrender.
How's that?
Because remember, what's the opposite of surrender is resisting.
Right.
Resisting the problem. Anything we could do not to resist it. Being bothered by something. Do you understand? Is not. So when
so any resisting energy
is a lack of surrender.
Is lack of surrender.
Correct. Which we know already that whatever we resist persists.
Right.
So we have to find a way to get out of that dogma of resistance. Every time something happens, we resist it. We're bothered by it. Another form of surrender is basically you're not surrendering, knowing that you're surrendering personal control for personal peace. You're no longer seeking to control everything. That's another way. When you have bitachon, trust, it's another form of surrender. These are all forms of surrendering, that you can just surrender and not be bothered by the situation. Not worry about the situation. Just surrender to your higher power.
And coupling that with action?
Depending on either faith is just being positive in that situation.
Right.
There's another form of surrender. It's called bittul.
Nullification.
Okay? Nullification. Which that one is closing your eyes. Just closing your eyes to a place of dom, quietness. Just closing your eyes. Right now you can't deal with it. Closing your eyes to it. Not numbing it. Addictions are the opposite of a bittul.
Right.
Because the purpose of pain is to get you to close your eyes to the ultimate purpose, that there's a bigger purpose in life, that this is happening for your benefit. You'll never get there unless you accept it.
So any form of resistance
Is the opposite of surrender.
is the opposite of surrender. Resistance to the truth.
Correct.
Resistance to pain.
Complaining, numbing it. Addictions are resisting it.
Addictions are resisting because they're numbing.
Correct. You
Right.
want to control how
Here's
you feel.
a pain. I want to resist this pain. Let me numb
Correct.
it.
I want to control how I feel.
Nagging our spouse. Resistance. Resistance.
Resistance is what persists. Did you think about it practically in your life? Did you ever get a breakthrough on everything you resisted?
Did I ever get a breakthrough on anything I resisted? It's a big question. But, where I always struggle with is on that energy of non-resistance and then the energy of creation and doing.
Okay.
Right. So certainly in terms of my business, there was a lot of resistance. I was fighting the competitor. I wanted to get more. Sometimes I would live off. I sometimes
But that's
live for 3 or
different.
4
Let's say
weeks.
you had a problem in life. You had a problem. One thing is business. Business, you have to,
The creation. So that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Coupling the surrender with
normal,
creation.
when you have a situation in your life that you're dealing with, if you resist it, even if you resist a problem at work, it doesn't get better
Correct. 100%.
until you get into the solution.
Right. You got to dive right into the pain.
Yeah, you got to dive right into it. What do I change? I change either procedure or perspective, but I got to change something. I can't just sit there and be bothered that I have this problem.
Right.
So the resisting is a lot.
Right, because
of
surrender
times,
sounds like a big word, but you're saying very simple. Don't complain. No resentments.
it's what it, it's
Accept
just,
what is
Just think about what's
go into
what's the opposite of surrender. You can probably get to the answer. You understand? If I know
Right.
resistance is the opposite of surrender, control is the opposite of surrender. And what do I normally do when I have a problem? I resist it and I can try to control it.
Okay, and that's why there's infinite levels of surrender, because there's infinite levels of resistance.
Right.
It's always something somewhere
Correct.
that we're
For example, it's the same way as I would say, if you get rid of what are all questions? So I ask you a question, right? If I have a question about if I should do something, that question has a form of fear. Right? Every question I have about should I marry this person, should I not marry this person, should I do this, should I not? That question really has some kind of fear in that question. But if
Okay.
I get rid of the fear,
should I invest in this? Should I not? There's certain fear
So
associated.
let's say, should I invest in Amazon?
Okay.
Right? And all of a sudden, because I have a fear, it's not going to go up. But once I really get rid of the fear, then the answer comes up. Our job is to we're lost today because we're looking for answers instead of looking for the problem and the fear in the question.
Say more.
Should I marry this person?
Okay, so what
Okay.
should I do with that?
All of a sudden, what's going to pop up? How do I know I'm going to be attracted to them? How do I know I'm going to be happy? Well, you don't know.
Right.
If you don't surrender, you're not guaranteed. You're going to learn on the way. Okay.
Right. She can get
that
sick
may-
in 5 years.
That could make
Yeah.
me feel better. I don't know.
Right.
Right? How do I know they're going to be rich? Well, that belongs to God. I don't know. How do I know he's going to make me happy? Well, happiness is up to me, not up to them. Then I have no questions anymore.
So then marry anyway.
Marry them. Do you understand? Most of our problems, we're too much into our fears. The ego is always focusing on looking good. The soul is focusing on doing good.
So the soul the soul doesn't have questions. It knows what to do.
It's
This-
clarity. Soul is
Clarity.
clarity. Amun is clarity. Questions, bilbulim, amalek is only out of fear.
Okay, just to change the conversation a little bit. You, Gedale, are working on something, whatever it is, right? And creating a certain world. There's a message you want to share with everyone. What do you have some sense of what that is? What is that world you're trying to create with your work?
I want to definitely grow my audience, bring on probably bigger guests, just to try to mesh in the spiritual world with
Science.
a little bit. That would something. Write a book. I'm writing a book now, but write a second book on surrendering, just the clarity on surrender.
Right. And the actual end product.
And the end products.
Hey, how do you measure success? How do you
just bring people to Rabbi Nachman's teachings? That's really
right.
Everything else. I'm happy with.
Do you find non-Jews
a lot
resonating with your message?
Tons.
The teachings of Rabbi Nachman.
Yeah.
Strong.
Rabbi Nachman even would say that. He said it.
That what?
He says the whole world needs me.
Oh,
Even
interesting.
non-Jewish people daily. In my recovery centers, I speak about Rabbi Nachman.
Oh, brilliant.
Recovery, the addictions, all Rabbi
Right.
Nachman.
So you mentioned a book that you're working on.
One book, yeah, that I'm hopefully almost done with. That's more of 365 like one-liners that I like. Quotes that I really like that people can resonate.
Can you give a few of your favorites?
God
sneak
has to
peek
break
into
your
the
heart
book.
to save your soul.
God has to break your heart to save your soul.
Instead of thinking, instead of questioning your creator, question your thinking.
Okay.
I gave you the one about the trophy wife. Don't look for a trophy wife. Find the trophy. The way make you a trophy. Job in life is to repair, not to despair.
Now, just a whole book of 365
Of these kinds of meditations. Yeah.
And
Short
they're influenced by
meditations.
Rabbi Nachman's teaching, set in a
Some of them are not. Some of them by other people.
right.
But you could see from this interview, remember one-liners.
Right.
People do remember one-liners, and it just get them to remember what else was said about that.
Right. A certain meditation connected.
Yeah.
to it. And for you, it's been a
I'm into that one-liners. It's like a good mantra.
got it. So the whole speech could be for one line.
You know, like for example, I know many of Gabriel Matz's pain. His
Yes.
stuff. You know, the hungry ghost.
Right.
You know, when he spoke about what did he speak about the hungry? You know, he spoke about a hungry ghost. Oh, don't ask why the addiction, but ask why the pain.
Yes.
That's
that's something that's
a loaded.
I've remembered for many years.
Right, but that's a heavy.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, because it focuses you on what am I running for? He's got wonderful quotes.
Yeah.
But why the addiction? Don't ask why the addiction, but why the pain. And that's
sometimes you have to talk for a long time to come up with.
But that line itself is just it's so
right.
powerful.
It says so much.
It says so much.
A lot of people remember it.
It says so much. Instead, many people are really, dealing with, I had a therapist that from the person's drug of choice what their emotional issue is. You for example, a person that needs heroin, they're missing love in their life. Cocaine, self-confidence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you even see it's not what the drug does is what is it, what's that missing? What's that need that you're missing?
Right. I've seen it earlier. I asked you a question about loneliness, right? I asked if sadness is loneliness. Where that was coming from is almost uniformly people who I've seen who are deep into porn addiction. The underlying root somewhere in there, under the anger, under the self-confidence issues, under everything, is this intense loneliness.
Yeah.
And it often takes a long time to uncover that.
Which is low self-esteem. Because there's nothing wrong with being alone. It's lonely is a state of mind, but alone is good. What's wrong with being alone?
Depends for how long.
Okay, but I'm saying I
confinement
could be
is-
alone to meditate, but I don't.
Sure, 100%.
A loneliness feeling,
The loneliness feeling.
the state
Right.
of loneliness, that is a problem,
Right.
and that makes things worse because they become more alone and more alone and more alone. More addictions.
So the reason you brought this up about different addictions connecting to different
About Gabriel Matz's quote.
about the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's why the addiction, why the pain. There's
Correct.
so much in there.
Now, why is this guy alone? Because he got rejected. He got, somehow in his life, he got rejected by a girlfriend. He got rejected by his parents. So he's got low self-esteem. So that's why he feels the problem with, and there's another great line that says, people are lonely because they build bridges they build walls instead of bridges. So think about when you have low self-esteem, you're very fragile. So you're going to build a lot of walls to protect yourself from failing again. You're not building bridges. You're not
Bridges
building
of connection.
relationships. Yeah, because
Right.
what happens if I get hurt in that connection? I'd rather build a wall. This way I can't get hurt.
Understood.
So it forces you not. You're protecting your ego, but you're isolating yourself from, because you're isolating yourself from pain, but you're protecting your ego. You're not growing.
Understood. So when I mentioned, when I asked about what you're looking to, you mentioned your podcast. Can you speak a little bit about your podcast?
I have a podcast today. I think we're like, 40, 50,000 followers on Spotify. I travel, all over the world, when I need to, when I have time. Again, the business is,
Right.
It's tough to do both. And again, more guests, more followers, just helping more people. I don't know, maybe.
What is a
another book.
podcast about?
Everything, pretty much everything.
Similar to what you spoke about today.
Today, very
You
similar.
do it daily. I've listened to it a few times.
Yeah, daily stuff. on Rabbi Nachman's teachings, Baal Shem Tov's teachings, whatever we can relate to the condition, the month, the energy of the month.
Right.
Sometimes on signs.
Remember,
So-
someone shared with me one of yours around the names people have and connected to
Yeah.
different struggles.
Correct.
Things like that.
Correct.
It was
That's
very poignant for that day that I got it for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
I don't remember why, but
God's sending us hints constantly. Especially when we're struggling, He sends you hints of what you need that day.
right. So daily you're dropping.
And it's
You're
funny
dropping
because
something.
there's times where I've needed the quotes. I have a team that makes the
Right.
quotes from the Instagrams,
Right.
and they send it to me to approve, and I'm like, it's me talking to me.
Of course, we're always doing this for
It's
ourselves.
always-
We're giving
it's
ourselves the
correct. It's me
our
talking
own
to me.
message. Okay, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for
Thank you. Such a
coming out. I
pleasure.
hope this,
We covered a lot.
and I hope we've inspired you to do more to share your own message on your
Absolutely.
podcast, because you did
Same
inspire me as someone who had a business and was doing things in a very
Yeah.
public way. I said, okay, if there's someone who can
Why not? Why not?
balance both. Someone asked me how I
Absolutely.
have time for a podcast. You know what I told them?
What?
I don't watch porn anymore.
There you go. You make it happen. You make it happen.
There's a lot of time when you're not.
And this is also something that's very pleasurable. You get new information. You meet new people. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
It's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
And sometimes I get to listen to the messages myself, and I say, spot on.
Usually all the time. Exactly.
Thank you so much, Gedale.
Pleasure.
It's great.
Pleasure. Thank you.